Well, hello and welcome once again to the DCL podcast, where we're inviting you to sit back, relax, and we'll be on our way shortly. Well, welcome back to the DCL podcast, your podcast to help you and your family cruise a little smarter. And we are going to turn our focus on a Minisode today, when to book airline tickets. And with me is my wonderful wife, Anawik. How you doing?
Good. How are you?
We've got a bunch of questions recently. We just got back from Europe, and some of you are thinking about traveling over there next year. Some are still traveling this year, but a lot of questions about when to book airline tickets. And I guess I will say this, there is no tried and true perfect time to book tickets. We're going to give you kind of our philosophy on what we do. And then I looked up an article on the Points Guy. The Points Guy focuses on using airline points and how to accrue points and stuff like that and use it. But they also have a lot of articles on just travel in general. There's a lot of different sites, but it's one site that I kind of go back and forth with. And I think that for the most part, the information that they provide is spot on with what they have. So if you're just looking for a place to start, I would definitely Google the Points Guys. We'll put it in the show notes as well for this article. And I guess as we turn it to, we're going to talk about it in two different ways. One, using money to book tickets, and two, using points. And we're not going to get deep into the points, but let's start with the points aspect of it, because that's how we booked our tickets for our summer 2022 cruise. Say that like 3 times fast. Yeah. Wake, what's kind of the philosophy that we use? Because you're the one that really does the booking when it comes to using airline miles.
So the airlines release their mileage seats 330 days prior to travel. And at that 330-day mark, the most seats with the best routings are what is available. And once those mileage award seats are booked, they're booked. You know, there's some in the weeds details about whether you're booking on the actual airline or whether you're booking with a partner and all of that kind of stuff as far as like how many seats are available. But it's best just to look really big. I mean, I generally put a reminder on my calendar and I look on that day 330 days out, and we try to book as quickly as possible. And that seems to be a standard. Like that hasn't changed through COVID, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and matter of fact, we have rebooked a cruise. I mean, another Greek Isles cruise next year in June. And
right, and I'm already looking.
Yeah, right now they're into May, right?
Yeah, probably end of May, I think it is.
And we're looking to leave June 10th, so it's going to come pretty quickly as far as the miles go. And once again, we don't want to get too deep in the weeds, but just kind of know this. So we work for Alaska. Most of our miles that we accrue is through Alaska Airlines. Alaska Airlines does not fly internationally. But we have partners that we can use like British Airways and Iceland Air and whatnot. And just know this, because our miles are through Alaska, we can use them on there. But those carriers only allot so many seats for partner airlines to be able to book. So,
and on certain routings.
So if you're going to want to get your best routing, you're going to want to do it right away, because otherwise you can end up with things like you may still be able to use your miles, but maybe it's a flight to London, and then you're going to have a day off there before you're going to be able to get to Rome or something like that.
Or multiple stops. I mean, we're fairly picky about how we fly. We live on the West Coast, so our preference is always to get to Europe from Portland or from the West Coast. We don't want to make a stop on the East Coast. That just... Not stopping on the East Coast for us helps the jet lag situation.
Right.
Which is honestly one of the reasons we've used Iceland Air pretty regularly, is because just the way that the flights, the times of the flights and the routings and the lengths of the flights makes it, for some reason, even though you're still flying overnight, we all feel better when we arrive in Europe. And so to connect on the East Coast for us means getting up super early in the morning and still kind of getting there at the same time on that day 2, but we're all pretty worn out if we do that.
So I guess to reiterate, probably the smartest thing to do if you're going to use points and you want to really have the best shot of getting the itinerary that you want or the flights that you want, you really need to start looking early and book those points early. And for most of them, they're refundable in the sense that you can get your points back.
You can change it, yeah.
If you decide you don't go or whatever else. Okay, let's change it a little bit to, now let's look at it using money. And before we talk about as far as when to book, possibly using cash, there is a couple strategies you can use. There are a couple apps out there. The two that we use or that I use when we're doing that is Kayak and Hopper. Mm-hmm. And on both of those, you can put in whatever itineraries you want. So we want to go to Rome next year. So we're going to go Portland, Rome, and I'm going to put in Seattle to Rome because we could drive up to Seattle. just as easily to see what the fares are from there or what the schedules are from there. And you can create those itineraries and then set alerts. So you're going to get alerts from them every time it changes. And I think you can even put like, if you don't want to you want an alert every time it changes by $1 or something like that, you can put that in there as well. So that's kind of a strategy to put those itineraries in and then start getting a feel for how much those bookings are going for. So when you think about cash and buying airline tickets with cash on a way internationally, when do you start thinking about looking?
If we're gonna pay for it, well, I usually actually start looking kind of at that same 11 months out, but the 11-month out is gonna be high. It will drop. So I generally look then just to kind of get a feel of what it costs, because you can't sit around and wait for a $200 fare because it's never going to be $200, right? So just to kind of get like this year, what are we looking at, and kind of get a ballpark figure and then go from there. And usually 4 to 6 months out is kind of when you'll get that sweet spot window of fares before the flights get booked, and then you get in a supply and demand situation where the cost starts to go up because there's fewer seats.
Yeah, so with the
routings too. You want to make sure, nobody wants to make 2 connections if they don't have to.
Right. Nobody wants to make 2 connections.
No, ever.
Yeah, and we'll talk about that in just a second as far as like connecting times too. But so looking at what they recommend in the points guy, once again, he's talking about for 2023, they've got a trip planned that they're going to next March, 9 months from now. So he started looking, basically, like you said, 11 months out. But from their recommendation is that the prices are just going to sit there for quite a while.
They do.
So to book it at that point is probably, you don't really need to book it there. Their recommendation is kind of what you said, recommends travelers avoid booking more than 150 days out, since there's always a chance airlines could bring prices down to adjust for demand. Note that this advice applies to cash fares, and if you're using airline miles, what we said before, it's never too soon to start checking and lock something in if you find something you're after.
Right.
So the flip side of it too is everybody kind of travels differently, but we kind of know, all of us here probably travel to Orlando on a regular basis, so we all kind of know what the going fare is to go to Orlando.
Right.
For us, we go to Hawaii quite a bit. We kind of know what a going fare is to Hawaii. So when you go on and you take a look at it and it's $1,000 one way, when we know that probably right now you can get one for in the 300 or something like that, then we're not going to pay for that. But,
right.
But by starting 11 months out, it kind of gives you an idea of where that fare is, and then you can kind of watch it and see where it goes. And then when it reaches to that point that you feel comfortable buying, buy it, because
and then don't look anymore.
And don't look back. Buy it, don't look back, and enjoy your vacation, and make sure that you get that routing that you want, because
right.
that's gonna make it a lot easier for you. Now,
I will say,
go ahead.
And for us at least, the number of connections that we want, the routing that we want, is worth paying a little bit more for us. We would pay a couple $100 more to only have one connection, avoid the East Coast, all of those things that we kind of are on our checklist of airfare.
Let's just talk about that a little bit, because there were some questions about how long to book kind of a layover.
Yeah.
A layover time. So
connection time.
So things to think about: Atlanta, JFK, they're very large airports, and depending upon which terminal you come into, you have a long distance to go a lot of times, or it's not very convenient to change terminals to get to your international flight. So there was a question, somebody was like looking at 45 minutes. I would never book a 45-minute
in either of those airports.
Yeah,
or London, Heathrow, either. I wouldn't. That's not long enough. In Atlanta, I know, just as an example, I believe that the legal connection time is 45 minutes. If you're coming domestically and heading out internationally, it's not enough.
No.
It's just because if your flight's 10 minutes late, and then they close the doors 10 minutes early on any flights, and I think international flights it's even earlier than that, you're not going to make it. And especially if you have kids who can't haul their own stuff. Right.
Right. So, it kind of frustrates me sometimes. I see our company do that to people where, legally they can sell you a ticket with a 45-minute, turn. But, right now with things being crowded, especially in the summer, you've got weather delays sometimes on the East Coast and everything else. And it just takes, 5 or 10 minute delay that can make you miss that flight. So I would definitely, for me, this is just me speaking, I would want comfortably like a 2 hour delay or 2 hour layover at a minimum when you're going from a domestic flight to an international flight.
I mean, I don't want 5 hours, but I also don't want 45 minutes.
No, but I mean,
we're fairly particular here.
Right, but going through London, we had how long was our?
It was 2. We were scheduled to land at 1:15, and we were supposed to leave at 3:20, and our departure was delayed, and we got in early, and it was still pretty close.
Yeah, I mean, we had probably about 30, maybe 45 minutes, but it took us a good hour and 15 minutes plus to transit from our flight through customs, then through security again.
And then security again.
Yeah, to get to our international flight to go to Seattle. So definitely one of those things that, most of the airports now, especially when you go the ones overseas, whether you're going through Amsterdam, if you're going through London Heathrow, and even Rome, they have just amazing waiting areas with shopping, lots of good restaurant opportunities and everything like that. And I would much rather, kind of hang out there for an extra hour, have a cup of coffee, do whatever it is you want to do, than to feel that rush of the 45 minutes. So it's something else to think about. Well, any other thoughts as far as that we haven't touched on for this?
I don't think
kind of quick minisode. I'll kind of read this, and sorry to read this to you guys, but the bottom line from the points guys, they touch on one other aspect here is like when during the week to buy. And
that is sort of I'm not sure. They say Tuesdays and Saturday mornings are the best.
So they say, well, there's no magical time or day of the week to book airfare to get the best prices. There are common themes. You're more likely to see fares suddenly get more or less expensive during the work week. And once you cross the 21 and 14 days until the departure date, you're likely to see more dramatic increases. And that 21 to 14 days, that was really talking in this article about the domestic air travel, not international. If you can, you're going to want to book before 21 days for international.
Yeah, but I mean, definitely domestic air travel at 21, 14, and then again at 3 days.
Yeah.
There's huge
increases. At the same time, that's also when you could see prices drop if the demand just isn't there. Right now, the demand is there. So
don't wait.
don't wait. Between now and Christmas, I would say if you're planning on traveling between now and Christmas, I would really look at those fares and book what you feel comfortable, because it's just going to be packed right now. On the flip side, many months out, you're not usually likely to see the fare change very dramatically. But as you get within a month or two before your flight, if you see a good fare, it's often a good idea to lock it in. And in fact, anytime you see a good fare in the current environment might be the perfect time to book the airfare for your next flight. Right. So when you see that airfare that you feel comfortable with, and you see it on that routing that you feel comfortable with, that's kind of their recommendation and our recommendation as well. So I know that this isn't a perfect science. I wish we could give you go on Tuesday. Yeah, 90 days out on a Tuesday is when you want to book that international fare. But once again, I think the strategies we employ, if you're going to use miles, book it as soon as you can. As soon as those windows come open, lock in that routing and those miles, because a lot of times, like with British, it'll start at say 32,000 miles plus,
and it goes up,
plus some, like $250 or something like that.
And but that extra cash is the taxes, so that's just an unavoidable fee. So
right.
Just FYI.
Yeah, British passes that on to you. The American carriers don't generally do that.
Well, they
right?
do. It's just London is an expensive airport to transit, and you have to with them.
Okay. Anyway, so once again, 11 months out, really start looking at and book those points if you're using cash. And of course, we're not actually using cash, showing up at the airport and handing them our dollars and pennies or anything like that. But if you're booking a cash fare, probably 6 months out, start looking at it. Maybe actually start looking at it 11 months out, but start really honing in on it at 6 months. Use a hopper, or else now I'm totally drawn up, like kayak or two. I don't really use not TripAdvisor. What's the one that's from Seattle that everybody?
Priceline?
No, not Priceline. That's the other big major one that people book through. I don't
know. I guess that's maybe a random tip. Book directly with the airline or an airline site. Do not use a third party, because if something goes south and you're, in Rome and your flight's canceled and you've booked with some
Expedia, that's what I'm thinking of.
Expedia or Priceline or something like that, you are probably out of luck. But if you've booked directly with Delta or United or British or whoever, or their partner carriers, you're probably going to be okay. But
Yeah, that's a good point there. I mean, we'll probably get some pushback on that. I know there's a lot of you out there that have booked with Expedia and Priceline and are happy to use it.
It can be great. If it works, it works. Great. But if something goes wrong, you might find yourself in trouble.
Because you're going to have to go through Priceline or Expedia to get that.
You might not get a refund. You might not get it. You might not get help. Anyway.
Yeah. So for us, the couple extra bucks sometimes that it costs to book straight through the airline, we always book straight through the airline. Spent. Yeah. And then we also generally always book straight through with the hotels as well, just because.
And cars.
And cars with just because then you're dealing with the corporation that's renting it to you, and you're not having to try and get a hold of Priceline in the middle of the night on the side of the freeway in Rome.
Exactly. Yeah. Nobody wants that.
But I know that a lot of you guys have used that out there, and if that works best for you and that's your strategy, then we support that as well. But these are just kind of our thoughts on when to book international airfare and using points or cash, and hopefully this helps you out. We'll put this. There will be a show note in Facebook on it. And if you guys have any strategies, if you have any opinions, if you disagree with anything that we've said here, if you've got some better ideas, I'd love to have you put it in the comments section, and we can all learn and travel a little bit better.
We can.
All right. Well, I guess we've got 2 weeks, and we got to start, or 3 weeks now, and then we got to start.
I know, 2.5. Yeah.
Start booking that next trip to Europe. Can't wait to go back.
Yeah, I thought you were talking about we're leaving again.
Oh, well, that's yeah. Anyways, all right, everybody. Thanks for coming back and taking a listen, and hopefully this helped. We'll see you next time on the DCL podcast. Goodbye, everybody.
Bye.
Well, that's going to wrap up our show today. I want to thank Anawik for coming on and helping me talk about some of the strategies that we use when booking airfare internationally. And at some point, we'll cover the domestic a little bit more in depth as well. As I went back and edited it, we kind of spoke a little bit. We book our cars generally through Costco. Costco is a great way to book rental cars, so we do use Costco for rental car booking. And hotels in the U.S., we will use some other third parties to book them sometimes just to get cheaper rates. But when we're international, we generally use Rick Steves. We like using those independent hotels that he recommends and have had a lot of success around Europe using those. And so for those, we generally always end up booking directly with the hotel. So just some strategies that we use. I know there's a lot of different ways out there for you to do it. If you'd like to add your strategies, get your thoughts and everything like that, sure would appreciate it if you go over to Facebook for this episode and put down your thoughts so that we all travel a little bit smarter. Well, thanks for coming back and taking a listen. If you and your families are heading down to Walt Disney World out on a Disney cruise vacation, Adventures by Disney, or just having some great time with family and friends this summer, on behalf of myself, Steve, Christy, and Chris, all of us here at the DCL podcast, we want to wish you to be well, enjoy time with family and friends, and we'll see you next time on the DCL podcast.
The DCL podcast is not affiliated with the Disney Cruise Line, Walt Disney Company, Adventures by Disney, or Run Disney. All of the opinions expressed on our shows are those of the hosts and the guests who appear on the show. If you have any questions about any of these products, please contact the Walt Disney Company.